All right. Welcome to the Atlas Ag News Show, the best live ag news show that happens on YouTube at 12:30 p.m. CST on Thursdays. My name is Clayton.
My name is Neil, and we're your hosts for the Atlas Ag News Show.
All right, we have a big week with news. We have the wheat crop is withering all across the plains. Planting progress is continuing. Trump says we should increase beef imports from Brazil, and the USDA staff threatened to quit over USDA office moves. We're going to cover all that today, right here, right now. But before that, we're going to get into our sponsor read. One size fits all does not work in agriculture. That's why when you call AgriFinancial, you talk to a real person who understands ag and cares about your success. No automated machines, no cookie cutter loans, just custom financing solutions for land, equipment, buildings, and bins. Your farm isn't standard and your financing shouldn't be either. Your Connect with AgriFinancial at cgb-agfi.com. All offers to lend are subject to approval. NMLS number 1472, equal housing lender. The thoughts and opinions you hear on the show today are our own and do not necessarily reflect those of the AgriFinancial team or them as a company. All right, let's jump into the USDA crop progress report. Mariah Squire with Successful Farming Reports. As of May 10th, 57% of the country's corn crop has been planted in the top 18 growing states. The USDA said 23% of the crop has emerged. Soybeans are at 49% of the total soybean crop has been planted in the top 18 states. And then 20% of the soybean crop in the 15 of the 18 major growing states have emerged. Spring wheat is 53% planted across the country, slightly ahead of the 5-year average. And then 23% of the spring wheat crop has emerged. Now, on to winter wheat, the USDA reported that 61% of the winter wheat crop across 16 of the 18 states has headed as of May 10th. The 5-year average is 45%. And the winter wheat condition for the week is good and excellent is at 20%, fair is 32%, and poor and very poor is at 40%.
I think I feel like the Kansas wheat crop is pretty well stick a fork in it at this point. From what
Yep.
I think you're going to see this week when they're making the crop tour that there's basically nothing there. Very similar situation in the South. I was talking to John from Instagram, that ag guy, yesterday, and he was saying that most of their wheat had been baled for hay because there was no grain, and what was left was totally compromised. I feel like Kentucky has a decent crop, but probably not a record crop. And then but if you look all the way across the board, all types of wheat, which there's multiple types of wheat grown in the U.S., all crops are below average. And I think you would see wheat go to the moon if world supplies weren't at record highs. Because of that, you're seeing a rally in the market, but not where we would be if world supplies are in the same shape that United States supplies are in.
Yeah, I was watching some stuff on just some wheat in the northern Great Plains, and they're facing moisture problems even with spring wheat planting, just because there's no moisture in the ground. Like there's plenty of plants going into the ground, but there's not a lot coming out comparatively, just because there has been no moisture all winter. I think the ground is just as tapped out on moisture as it can possibly be. So yeah, it's a good time to not be farming wheat, but to be trading wheat. I'll tell you that. So all right. So on to that. The U.S. winter wheat hits a rare low as 40% rated poor to very poor. And so this is covering just historic highs, this article. This is also by Successful Farming. The nation's winter wheat crop, suffering from what the USDA describes as a punishing drought compounded by freeze related damage, has reached historical low conditions. As of the latest USDA data, 40% of the nation's wheat is in poor to very poor condition. The last time this happened, which was rated this poor, was in May 2023. The percentage of the crop rated poor to very poor peaked that year at 44%. Including 2026 and 2023, the percentage of winter wheat in poor/very poor conditions has reached 40% during just the 8 years since 1998. In its Tuesday crop production report, the USDA said winter wheat production this year is forecasted at 1.05 billion bushels, down 25% from last year. The area expected to be harvested for grain or seed this year is 22 million acres. Considering an estimated 32.4 million acres of winter wheat were planted, the harvest to planted ratio for 2026 winter wheat crop is 67% or 67.9%. That's a markedly low ratio. In 2025, it was 76.9. And the average across the past 10 seasons is 74%. According to the May 2023 wheat outlook, the report from the USDA Economic Research Service, the harvested to planted ratio for the drought stricken 2022/2023 winter crop was the lowest since 1970. So yeah, we've got pretty record breaking lows for actual like crop being harvested compared to what was planted. And a 25% decrease from last year is it's a pretty big number. That's a pretty big market swing there.
It really is, and I think, unless the drought gives up, which it doesn't look like it's going to right now. If you look at the drought, the last severe drought the U.S. had was 2012, and if you look at that map versus this year's map, we're
Mm,
markedly drier this year than we were in 12. So, looks like it's going to be a large drought that's widespread. I think you're already seeing pressure from canola in the southern plains and
mm.
against wheat. So people are choosing to plant canola and leave the wheat drill in the shed. And if that trend continues along with the drought in the west, I think you'll see a record low planted wheat crop unless the board really takes off and tries to get the wheat acres pushed in this fall and next spring. Get farmers excited about planting wheat with market price. And then even then, the drought stricken acres, you're not going to do a lot with them. So I don't know. I think we could see wheat continue to rally from here, and I think anybody that grows wheat would. I mean, that's a welcome set of news. It's been a long time since we've wheat growers have seen profitable levels in our commodity price.
It's called poverty grass for a reason.
It really is.
I think, yeah, I would love to see a resurgence of wheat just because the connection to a wheat crop, I feel like wheat feels much more like food than corn or soybeans does. Like you can go into a wheat field and be like, that's where my bread comes from. No one goes into a corn or soybean field and is like, you know what that turns into? Ethanol and cow feed. Like no one's like that is what it goes to, but no one's thinking I'm gonna go buy cornbread from the grocery store that comes from this field. That's just not the mindset behind it. So I love wheat. It's a super underrated crop in my opinion. But yes, the markets have been absolutely awful for quite some time on it. So this show is brought to you by Agri Financial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder that all the opinions we hold in the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of Agri Financial or their team. Brazil beef imports jump despite probes. This is a controversial one. I think we'll have some good conversation later with our guest coming on about this. Very controversial topic. Chris Clayton with DTN reports Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins stood with the acting attorney general on May 4th, denouncing Brazilian Packer ownership for being affiliated with corruption, but also cartels as recently as last week, slave labor. She added that all of that was bad enough on its own, but it's also the detriment of America's great independent ranchers and consumers. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche made it clear the Trump administration is investigating the meatpacking industry for potential anti competitive behavior. Brazil is already under multiple Section 301 investigations by the U.S. Trade Representative for potential trade violations in cases going back to last summer. In the meantime, Brazilian beef exports to the U.S. are booming. According to the monthly USDA trade data released on May 5th, Brazilian meat packers shipped 795 million in beef to the U.S. in the first 3 months of the year, up 21% from a year ago. Last year marked a record for Brazilian beef shipments to the U.S., topping 175 or 1.75 billion, up 39% from 2024. Well, those are some big increases. Reuters also reported the Trump administration is fine tuning potential presidential executive orders aimed at reducing domestic beef prices. A White House official said on Tuesday after a delay in signing actions that were expected on Monday. Trump has been considering executive actions to allow increased beef imports into the U.S. and additional government support to help ranchers rebuild the American cattle herd that has dwindled to its lowest in 75 years. The president is committed to lowering beef and other grocery costs for everyday Americans, and the administration is accordingly fine tuning potential executive actions to alleviate temporary shortages in the domestic beef market. Beef prices have hovered near record highs despite lower prices for grocery staples in recent months, including eggs and milk. Beef is over 16% more expensive than when Trump returned to office in January 2025, making it the symbol of persistent inflation for American consumers as the summer backyard grilling season gets underway.
Yeah, beef has become a luxury item for the U.S. citizen, and I feel like it's definitely a Packer problem. I think uh, if if you kind of read between the tea leaves, they were kind of saying a lot of times that the Packers will say, "Oh, we had a fire or a burnt wire or something that caused a factory shutdown," and I think it's more of market manipulation, and it's not like the ranchers are seeing the benefit of that. It's strictly the Packers. When is a Brazilians leader, I believe Lulu
Mhm.
came into the White House for a meeting. After it was over, there there wasn't a press conference held. So I'm going to say what Trump had to say wasn't super popular, but needed to be heard by him. And and I hope that yeah, and I feel like they will. And Mr. Jim will probably talk to us about this. They're moving in the right direction to put pressure on the Packers to hopefully alleviate this problem for the citizen.
Yeah, I think there does need to be pressure on the Packers because, if you look at the share of the beef dollar, we were supposed to cover it last week, but we didn't have time. I have a great graphic that Bloomberg put together that kind of breaks down where in the chain that it actually, like where the prices and where the dollar's going. I would say that the import problem is a temporary band-aid for the lack of a cattle herd. I just know, we work so heavily in the row crop industry. We know how vital subsidies are to our crops. And like, there is just not that safety net for ranchers the way that there is for corn growers, soybean growers. I mean, people are like, "Well, man, they're taking out so much rangeland to put it in cropland." It's like, well, yeah, because you can get a check from the government with that. There's so much better infrastructure for the row crop grower than there is the cow calf guy. That Neil, you bought cows a few weeks ago. The safety net is not there compared to your normal crops. You can insure them and everything still, but it's not the same type of program that a row crop grower would have. And so I look at this and I say, okay, cool, we're putting a band-aid on this. What we need is, first of all, I mean, it's gonna be another 10 years because the farm bill just finally passed anything. It'll be another 10 years before we get another farm bill. But there needs to be some sort of infrastructure and legislation in place for the cow calf guys to want to grow their herd. They're finally making money. If you go on Twitter right now, cow calf guys are like, we're finally making money after a decade of not making money. And now Trump's just trying to tear it all down by importing more beef. Like that's the entire sentiment there. And so there is a very active conversation happening in the White House about all this. I doubt anything's going to change unless there's some major legislation going through. And I don't see the legislation keeping up with what, should actually be happening on the yeah, that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like there's not
Yeah,
enough
no,
legislation to back up Trump's claims.
yeah, I definitely agree. I think anything legislation wise in agriculture is very difficult to get through one house, much less both.
Yes.
And then you have to have the president on board as well. So I mean, we're a long way, more than likely, from seeing relief in the form of like a subsidy or like a support system for cow calf operators. And I mean, this is a problem that's not going to be fixed fast. I mean, you and I know how long it takes to build a herd, and when prices for live cattle are so expensive, it's very difficult to get the financing in place to be able to buy and build your herd. So, and then it takes a while for cows to reproduce too. So it's just a slow process.
So my question for you is, are you going to sell the calves from your bred cows or are you going to keep them?
Uh, we'll keep the heifers and we'll sell the steers.
Smart move. Smart
But
move.
we're gonna feed them out. Get them to 5 to 700 pound steer and then sell them.
See, I think you should actually build a massive cow herd.
That's the plan.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, you'll retire before you have more than 100 cows. I'm calling it. Your
We'll
turn for
see.
an ad read. It's your turn for an ad read.
This show is brought to you by AgriFinancial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just remember, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of AgriFinancial or their team.
All right. USDA staffers say they are not going to move. RFD TV reports concerns are continuing to grow over the USDA's reorganization efforts as union leaders warn many federal researchers may choose not to relocate from Washington, D.C. to the regional hubs across the country. The union representing government researchers says a recent poll found 76% of the members have no plans to relocate. The concerns mirror USDA's 2019 relocation effort to Kansas City, when many employees either resigned or accepted retirement instead of moving. USDA officials have said the reorganization is intended to improve efficiency and strengthen service to farmers and rural communities. Union leaders, however, argue that relocations could be devastating to federal agricultural research efforts and are calling on Congress to intervene.
I know one of the issues here was one of the buildings that they'd been using has gone into disrepair, and they were looking to move that building ownership to another four-letter agency to do the revitalization process.
Mhm.
And with that building being closed for remodeling, they have to move some out of. They can move some into the other building that they own, but I don't think there was enough offices available to everybody, and so part of the deal was they were going to move them into their hometowns or to USDA service centers. And I think, after you've been living in Washington, D.C., and you got all those nice amenities, it's very difficult to go to Paducah, Kentucky, or I mean, I don't know, wherever these service centers are. I don't think there is
Yeah,
one
I'll
in the
attest.
cities.
Paducah's a rough place to have to move.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to quite get I mean, there is good restaurants there, but you're not going to get the cuisine that you're going to get in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I think it said 76% have no plans to relocate. My only thing with that is 70%, 76% of those people is a lot of people. The USDA is a massive agency. What are they going to do? There's not enough government jobs even for 76% of the USDA researchers to find another job in Washington, D.C. Like they and I'm sure, it's government, it takes forever. I'm sure Congress will probably do something to make it harder. Despite we should all be okay with streamlining government efficiency, making things better for the farmers who are paying the taxes. We all agree on that. But now a bunch of researchers are just like, I don't want to leave Washington, D.C. I don't want to move to Utah or Kansas City or do this. It's like, where else are you gonna get a job? You do agricultural research. There's like five companies, the entire industry, and there's one government agency that does all the work. Like,
Yeah, that's a bluff.
yeah.
I'm
So
calling it. That's bluffing.
you have to remember this is coming from a union's point of view. Remember, unions are just there to negotiate. Unions have a lot more power in some ways, but also a lot less power than most people think. Like it's the USDA, they're huge. Like I'm sure the union has some say on things, but unions have to negotiate with the employer to like make things happen. So I don't know. Maybe 20% will quit. 76% sounds a little out there. So
Yeah, and these buildings I mean, they're like massive, like on
yeah.
another scale. I mean, like you can almost see the curve of the earth in these buildings. So, I mean, you can just imagine how long it would take to, to completely redo one of them is a 10-year project. It's not like it happens overnight. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a massive project. It's a massive lift, and to be totally honest, even if they did all quit, the US I mean, what, is the FSA office gonna get any slower than it is now? Like, I don't
it
think it
can't
can
get any
get slower.
slower.
I think we'll be okay. So, all right. This show is brought to you by Agri Financial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any of these opinions that we hold, especially about the USDA, are ours and not those of Agri Financial or their team. All right, more government. Bureau of Land Management cancels bison grazing leases for American Prairie. The South Dakota Searchlight reports the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, issued a final decision late last week canceling a series of permits that allowed bison grazing on federal land by the nonprofit conservation organization American Prairie. The move, which came after American Prairie and multiple other organizations formally protested a preliminary decision earlier this year, was condemned by conservation groups but praised by elected officials in Montana. who have sought the cancellation of bison grazing leases for years. This final decision is a victory for the rule of the law and the generations of Montanans who have stewarded our lands with care. Governor Greg Giafonte said in a statement, far too long, the Biden administration ignored the clear language of the Taylor Grazing Act in favor of an ideological experiment. I'm proud of our administration for leading the fight to reach this decision. And I think the Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum, and the BLM for putting Montanans first. American Prairie has a mission to conserve prairie land in Montana to create one of the largest nature reserves in the country, abutting Charles M. Russell's National Wildlife Refuge and Upper Missouri Breaks National Monument. The nonprofit owns and leases more than 500,000 acres in the state. The decision by the BLM focused on the 1934 Taylor Grazing Act, which is the legal framework that created grazing districts and governs leases on federal lands. According to the BLM decision, the act allows permits to be issued to graze livestock. Under a new interpretation of federal statutes, bison do not meet the definition of livestock. Citing a legal dictionary, the decision states that livestock refers to domestic animals used for production oriented purposes. The BLM lacks statutory authority to issue grazing permits under the TGA, where the animals to be grazed are treated as wildlife and intended for conservation purposes. It will not be managed for production, decision states. It goes on to state that the American Prairie's bison operations are not domestic nor production oriented. The decision affirms what livestock producers have long argued for in the compliance of governing law, Montana Stock Growers Association President Leslie Robinson said in a statement. BLM terminated all bison or combined cattle grazing permits for American Prairie and reissued cattle only grazing permits on 6 federal allotments.
I'm going to read between the tea leaves and say that this was an organization built to keep anything from happening on the prairie. No bison nor cattle, just grass or whatever. And I mean, I think a big part of a prairie ecosystem needs a grazing animal on there. So I can only see this as being positive. If there's no bison running because that organization was set up to not graze anything, which I'm assuming that's probably the case, just based off this article. Not of any previous knowledge. I'm going to say that, cattle being able to graze out there is better than no grazing ruminant and gets us closer to the actual ecosystem we need grazing on that grassland for the
So are
large
you saying
animal
there was
part
no
impact.
bison, or are you saying there were no bison in the actually grazing?
That's what I'm betting, that there was no bison actual grazing. It was just held up to keep cattle from being out there. That would be my guess.
I actually don't know enough. I used to live in Montana. I should know more. Um, I've done a little bit of research just because I have read quite a few books on bison. I think this is the age old conservationist versus the farmer and rancher. It's a
Yeah,
100-year-old battle. It's been happening for a long time. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. Honestly, this will probably turn back into at some point. Prairie. I actually am all for prairie. I love prairie conservation. The
sure.
prairie as an ecosystem is one of the coolest. There's so it's literally the equivalent of the rainforest, but just in grass form. Like as far as like actual biological density and things going on there. What I do have a problem with is it not being true authentic prairie. And true authentic prairie requires a grazing animal on it, like
Yes.
without doubt. Is it all the time? Probably not. But yes, there need to be ruminants on the land. We can all agree on that. The question is, should it be
100%.
cows or should it be bison?
Yep. And I mean, I think, I'm not going to say that a cow is going to eat or recycle as good as a bison. Well, I'm not sure. I've never looked at the differences, but as long as there's a ruminant animal out there doing what's intended to be doing is digesting the grass.
Yep.
Bison herds moved in and out of the land when they grazed one area down, they would just migrate.
Mhm.
Cows do similar actions. Yeah, I mean, I think if this is putting more ruminants on the land, that's and increasing the prairie, that's what we need to see. And I'd say there's a good argument to be had that we need more acres back into prairie lands, and and with hopefully that happens. More cattle herds expanding, more prairie expansion, um, and I think that'll be good for the country and good for the drought that's happening out west. This
Mm.
show is brought to you by AgriFinancial, your go-to custom financing solution in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of AgriFinancial or their team.
China eyes U.S. corn deal ahead of Trump Xi summit Thursday. Chinese officials are in discussions with U.S. counterparts to buy American crops, including corn, and could reach a deal during the U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to China this week. China could take U.S. corn as well as many other products, including sorghum and distillers' dried grains, according to the traders briefed on the matter. Soybeans, a cornerstone of agricultural trade between the two countries, are also a part of the discussions, they said, asking not to be identified because they're not authorized to speak publicly. The negotiations, which are likely to continue during the week, come as Beijing and Washington seek to preserve a hard won but fragile trade truce. The two sides are hoping to reach a final deal during Trump's first state visit to China since 2017. The trader said he is set to meet with counterpart Xi Jinping on Thursday morning. I
Yeah, I think
actually have no idea what's happened so far in terms of this. I'm gonna do a quick Google search and look, um, because I this is very fresh. Like they were meeting like last night our time. So
Yeah, I think you're seeing a total restructuring of the world order. Like you're seeing in real time the fall of the British Empire. I feel like, and then a restructuring where the United States, India, China, and Russia, uh, which are like some of the largest economies in the world, are kind of coming together as trade partners. And um, you know, you you're the British Empire is not, and Europe is not going to go down without a fight. But that's definitely part of this negotiation that's happening over there. And you can really see them fighting in the news hard with, psych ops trying to keep this from happening. I think whether it'll be good or not, I don't guess I'm good enough in world politics to know, but I do know that they've had us under their thumb for at least 250 years. So we definitely need to see a shakeup. I hope we can trust China, Russia, and India because they look to be like our largest future trade partners.
our largest future trade partners and also the people who benefit most from depending on Brazil and not us. That would be like my number. Anytime we talk about China, all I think is, if I were China, I would really, really not want to what you call it, I really wouldn't want to be entirely dependent on US beef imports, like or corn imports or soy imports or pork imports for that matter. And so if I'm another country, specifically Russia or Brazil, I don't remember what their pack is called, like what's that
BRICS,
basically what'd you say?
BRICS,
Yeah, BRICS, like, they wanna be a competitor to what the Western superpowers have been, like, we are a Western superpower, we are the Western superpower, and China, also a world superpower, has everything to gain from depending on someone that is also land-wise the same scale as us, like Brazil. So, I don't like saying Brazil is our number 1 competitor when it comes to things in the world because they're farmers down there, we have friends from Brazil, we know people who farm in Brazil, it's great. But the problem is like at the end of the day, they are a major competitor. And if this is business, which it is business, they are beating us in terms of scale and price right now. And as like, and we're a mature country. Everything like we are the Europe that we are Europe to them as Europe is to us. Everything just costs more. Taxes are way higher. It's harder to operate there. It's harder to do things. And so we have to rely heavily on subsidies to keep our industry afloat. Whereas if you're a less developed country, cost of production is lower. You have the ability to, yeah, basically all the geopolitics work out to be China should want to buy from Brazil, not the US. And so the article is incredibly true. The truce is incredibly fragile and we should be very cautious. So,
Yeah, I will say that China tends to like to use stockpiles of U.S. grain when they're trying to store long term, just because we have really good storing infrastructure, which our grain means our grain's in really high quality condition when it gets shipped over, versus Brazil, which stores a lot of their grain outside still.
yes.
But all it takes is time to build infrastructure. So I mean,
Yeah. And I was doing some research on it the other day too. The China itself has actually been behind in agricultural production compared to their manufacturing prowess. Like the agriculture industry in China is still very much the fragmented family farm. There is not industrial scale farming the way we have it here. Now, will that change at some point?
Yes.
Probably. But I was doing some research because, like, okay, if China's the leader in manufacturing, logically they would also be the leader in farming because, hey, industrial farming is just factories basically outside. I mean, if we're being honest, it is same kind of principles. You scale, you get efficient, you keep everything running as much as you can, make as much as you can. But they're actually behind in a lot of that. Eventually, China will wise up and they will figure out how do we become also a world superpower in food. It's a massive country too. Like we have to remember Brazil, geography wise, is very large. There is portions of the country that can grow things at scale. Their cotton industry has decimated the US cotton industry because they can just grow it cheaper than we can. And so I see China continuing to buy from Brazil, but also continuing to mature their own agriculture industry as they mature as a country and continue to reduce dependence on our imports to them. So,
Yeah, I think if you look at like some of the major agriculture services, they're calling China, or the call is in the next decade or so, China will be a net exporter of food versus a net importer, and that'll be at a massive change versus
mhm.
what we've seen in the last 100 years.
Yep. All right. This show is brought to you by Agra Financial, your go to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of the Agra Financial team. How does Congress deal with fertilizer? Chris Clayton, once again, with DTN reports again, farmers are calling for more price transparency in the fertilizer markets as U.S. senators questioned whether the industry is taking advantage of farmers amid supply disruptions and price spikes tied to the Iran war. The U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee held a hearing on fertilizer market challenges on Tuesday as the committee prepares to draft its version of the Farm Bill, which will likely include new provisions tied to the fertilizer price reporting and possible incentives to spur more domestic production. Senate Agriculture Committee Chairman John Boozman from Arkansas described fertilizer shortages facing farmers as a national security issue that needs to be addressed in the long term. Democrats in the committee also repeatedly used the hearing to question the war in Iran and the subsequent closures of the Strait of Hormuz, uh, pointed to the impact that has directly had on fertilizer. They were high before the war started, but I will note that there is a direct link between recent escalations in this war um, and this war. So,
Yeah, I mean, that there's never an emergency that's not used for price gouging. I mean,
yeah.
that's just the playbook. I think that's it's not only with this industry, that's any industry. I mean, you just see time and time again when when supply tightens, even if it is, say any country, and not necessarily in the US, but if world supply tightens, even if it's not a tight supply in that certain country, the price still is raised. It's just that's part of the free market. We can choose not to buy their product, and that's a choice that we have to make. And we can adversely affect their revenue stream by not choosing not to place fertilizer on our crop. The consequences of that are less of a crop, but also it gives them less money to operate on and maybe causes them to lower their price of fertilizer.
Yeah, and the fertilizer industry has convinced everyone that they probably need more than they actually do. I think there is there is a general prescription that is fed to everyone of it's good just to apply this every year or every other year. Like you just kind of need this, even though like modern agronomic data, we're constantly getting better at it. Soil tests are easier to take than ever. It's cheaper to get all this stuff done than it ever has been. So there's definitely like there's room to cut back that most guys I think don't experiment with. Like there are plenty of places you can cut back. Once again, we have described the fertilizer companies as the mafia. You own the mines and you can intimidate people because you own the means of production. Like no, there are a lot of things that you can kind of like figure out and like produce on your own, specifically fertilizer, because so much of it does come out of the ground. You can't just like go make your own. You can't even build a plant. You have to get a permit, you have to get a mine, I mean, it's $100 million startup, like that's just what it takes to get started versus chemical manufacturing, like it does cost a lot still, don't get me wrong, but you can put up a building and start manufacturing chemical if you can find the right sources, for your ingredients versus fertilizer. It's like, no, it's the base ingredient. You're going to have to buy it from somewhere. So you have to mine it from somewhere versus buy it. So Fertilizer maker Mosaic cuts output after Iran war raises costs. Bloomberg reports fertilizer producer Mosaic is temporarily taking nearly 2 million tons of phosphate production off the market, underscoring the severity of the Iran conflict's disruption to a key agricultural and mining input. The U.S. biggest phosphate fertilizer producer is reducing production rates at its plants in Bartow, Florida, and in Louisiana to about half of capacity because of the higher prices for sulfur, which the company uses for processing. CEO Bruce Bondine said on an earnings call, the temporary move allows us to limit the need for incremental sulfur at today's prices and wait until the market normalizes, he said. The amount comes to almost a tenth of the U.S. total phosphate production. The decision comes after Mosaic said last month that it would idle two Brazilian facilities, taking about a million tons of phosphate production offline. If the conflict in the Middle East continues, the company has more options for production curtailments, Bodine said Monday. The move can be quickly reversed if raw material availability and prices move, the company said. The blockage of the Strait of Hormuz has disrupted global flows of the sulfur needed to produce phosphate fertilizers. About a fifth of the global phosphate trade and nearly half of the world's sulfur trade depends on that route. The market was already tight before the conflict due to higher demand from the mining industry. Mosaic buys most of its sulfur from North American oil and natural gas refiners to make sulfuric acid for phosphate production, according to a company filing. The acid is also a key input for the extraction of metals like copper. Prices for diomium phosphate, the most common form of fertilizer, were the highest price since last October, while spot sulfur prices in Tampa were at record high. Tampa-based Mosaic reported 373 million operating loss for the first quarter, adjusted earnings per share to 5 cents, missed analyst estimates of 23 cents. The company's share fell as much as 4.6% on Monday.
Yeah, I think this is a discontinue. I mean, they're trying to drive the price up higher, and then they'll resume production and sell it at a higher price. That's my
But Neil,
call.
they're losing money. I mean, they couldn't be doing that.
Yeah, they're not.
Mosaic quarterly report for past 8 quarters. Let me look this up real quick. Let's see how much money they've made on top of their $300 million loss. Mm, let's see. Q1 lost net loss. Oh, they've actually lost money for a few quarters. Those are write-offs, actually. Just remember those are write-offs. Um, let's see. Profit 238 million, more profit 280 million. Yeah, they're fine. They're gonna be fine.
Yeah, they'll be all right. This show is brought to you by AgriFinancial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of AgriFinancial or their team.
Food giants hit with a consumer lawsuit calling ultra processed ingredients addictive. No. Recent government and customer lawsuits aim to compare the processed food sector to the tobacco industry, where litigation has led to billions of dollars in settlements and restrictions on marketing. One of the biggest challenges so far is that it's been difficult to prove the connection between health issues and processed foods. I don't think it's been difficult to prove that at all. I think it was very clear that processed foods are bad for us. Last fall, a judge threw out the first consumer lawsuit against packaged food giants. The court determined the complaint was woefully deficient because the plaintiff failed to prove ultra processed foods cause his industries and instead focused on the addictive nature of these products. In the most recent complaint, attorneys tried to adjust those concerns by detailing the connection between processed food consumed and health problems. Plaintiff Olivia Cree, a woman in her early 20s, said she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2016. The disease did not exist in children prior to the notorious and unlawful conduct of processed food companies, she said. The lawsuit also lists packaged foods uh, she frequently consumed prior to her diagnosis, ranging from drinking Kraft Heinz Capri Suns 4 times a year to eating General Mills Reese's Puffs 5 times a week. The complaint names 12 major food companies, including Kraft Heinz, Modeles International, Post Holdings, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, General Mills, Nestle, Kellanova, Kellogg, Mars Incorporated, ConAgra Brands, and Unilever. Food companies have repeatedly fought back against consumer and government challenges, including the recent lawsuit from San Francisco's Attorney General.
Sugar. I mean, that's the main ingredients in a lot of these food, or a big part of the ingredients in a lot of
No, no,
these
no, no, no,
foods.
no, not sugar, corn syrup
Corn syrup, yes.
or
Uh,
artificial sweeteners,
yeah,
but yeah, sugar.
artificial, yeah, for sure. And you see that type 2 diabetes. I mean, that's a like when you're used to eating sweet food, that's definitely an addiction similar. Like, I don't know how addictive it is, but I can tell you that just from my own experience that when you start eating that stuff, it's very difficult to kick it.
Yeah, I was gonna
And I
say
think it
quit sugar for a few days and see how much you sit there just craving it. Like,
Yeah, but then once it's out of your diet, then you don't miss it. So it's one
yeah.
of those things that definitely, that the sweet flavoring or whatever brings you back to those foods, and then makes fresh food taste worse for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
But then
No,
after
I'm
you kick it, that fresh food tastes good again. So
my wife will attest to it. I'm kind of a sugar Nazi in our household because I'm like, "Just keep it away, keep it out," because the less sugar I eat, the less I want it and the
yeah,
happier and healthier I feel. I feel gross when I eat sugar.
hmm
Yeah, it's not that it's all bad. There is sugar that can be used in things, but I don't ever eat processed food anymore and don't feel worse after. I never feel good. I feel like I've taken my health a lot more seriously the past 2 years, and I can just tell. I can just tell my energy levels and the amount I'm actually, like, feeling good is totally different depending on what I'm eating. Like, if I'm traveling, I'm eating gas station food or eating fast food, I feel gross all the time. So, I think we should see litigation against this purely because I think there has been malicious intent from large food. There has 100% been people in these companies trying to make sure that their food is as addicting as possible. Uh, it's good business if we're being totally honest. I mean, you get people to keep buying and keep coming back. You go to the cereal shelf. I mean, just look at it. Like, it isn't just sugar, sugar, sugar. It's
yeah.
dessert. It's dessert for breakfast. It's crazy. So, this show is brought to you by Agri Financial, your go to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of the Agri Financial team. All right. So, this is actually from last week, but I felt like it was worth covering because I do think it's interesting. Let's break down beef. Let's break down the dollars of beef, and let's also talk about the AgriStats case that has come uh, from the White House accusing AgriStats of basically price fixing and helping the Packers price fix. All right, so the DOJ plans to settle the AgriStats case, White House official says. Reuters reported on May 4th that the U.S. Department of Justice plans to settle its case against data company AgriStats with an agreement officials hope will help drive down food costs. White House advisor Peter Navarro said on Monday the DOJ alleges AgriStats' weekly reports on meat pricing and sales enabled anti competitive practices in the chicken, pork, and turkey industries. The case is scheduled to go to trial this month. AgriStats has called the claims baseless and says its services results in lower prices. A company representative did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The Trump administration have been increasingly focused on affordability as Americans sour on how President Donald Trump has handled the rising cost of living. Meatpacking industry probe. Speaking at the same press conference, the Attorney General Todd Blanche said the DOJ will use every law enforcement tool available to address rising food prices. Prosecutors have reviewed more than 3 million documents. Oh my gosh, and conducted interviews in their ongoing probe of the meatpacking industry. Blanche said he urged whistleblowers to come forward and potentially claim financial awards for information. Multiple plant closures across the country, the current market structure, and the high concentration in multiple uh, industries indicate anti-competitive activity. Tyson Foods, Cargill, JBS USA, and the National Beef Packing Company slaughter about 85% of the U.S. market cattle that become steaks, beef roasts, and other cuts of meat. The companies have been accused in private lawsuits of conspiring to inflate U.S. beef prices by restricting supply. They have denied wrongdoing. Tyson, Cargill, and JBS have agreed to pay tens of millions of dollars to settle some claims. Spokespeople for the company did not immediately respond for comment on Monday.
Buy local beef.
Buy local beef. Buy your beef
Yeah,
from Neil.
yeah.
Just kidding. You're not selling your beef.
Will
Yeah,
be some.
once again, monopolies, uh, it's happened before. And the fact they're settling does just kinda show me that they are guilty and, like, they're aware of it. Like, anytime the company settles, maybe it is because of litigation, but, like, if they're in the wrong, it's probably cheaper to settle than to fight it. So, I'm and that's not give the court its process, let it happen. But I mean, there's just so much evidence to show that the Packers have historically been just against everyone, just all the time. So,
For themselves against the rancher and the consumer. I think part of something that would help this is like we see agri-stats, they use those stats, to set price and supply. We need an additional service that could generate a competing report, whether that's the USDA or maybe another private entity.
Yeah, I'm looking through this article here, just kind of covering the beef prices. That's got a lot. Okay, so it's kind of showing. I can't share my screen here, and I know you can't access the article because you don't have Bloomberg. Basically, it walks through like, okay, here's how much what you call it's paying for the price of whatever. So currently, this is September 2024. The cow calf ranch, their operating cost is about $1,251 per animal. Currently, it's showing a $970 profit. For a long time, that has not been the case for the cow calf guy. Then it goes to a stalker. So this is June 2025. Um, paid the stalker would have paid $2,221 to the cow calf ranch. $350 operating costs, $329 profit per head. Okay, feed yard, $2,900 to the stalker, operating costs $825, $45 deficit. So losing $45 a head. Meat packer, okay, pays the feed yard 3,680, and then $385 operating costs. So that puts them at $240 deficit. So this is the meat packer, $240 losing. The grocer then pays the meat packer $1,800 and then $233 in operating costs, then $450 in profit. And then the consumers pay whatever the grocer's total price is. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, this makes it look like the Packers got it pretty rough. I'm not saying the Packers haven't been losing money recently with high beef prices because there has been a lot of the cow calf guys have a lot more leverage than they used to. But I'm saying that if we shifted this to 4 years ago, this is an article that was published last month. If we looked 4 years ago in the cow calf industry, who's making the money? The cow calf guy, maybe a little bit, but $970 a head, no way. Feed yards historically have been pretty profitable. Owning a feed yard is pretty helpful, especially if you're good at trading. The meat packers have historically been profitable, and the stalkers usually find their stuff. Typically, the guys who are getting the short end of the stick are the cow calf guy. So it is interesting seeing how a mainstream news outlet does break down the cost per cow, because I'm sure they didn't step on a single ranch to write this. But
No, and I would bet that even if they're not profitable in the last couple quarters, they've been just historically profitable in the last 10 years. So it's very hard to feel sorry for them with the practices that they've employed, against the rancher and against the consumer. And they even even if they're on bottom right now, they'll be back on top soon.
yeah, they'll be back on top soon. And I would also like to note that if they shut down a beef plant or they do anything like that, like oftentimes you can write that down. Like those are losses that will have tax benefits in some capacity at some point. Um, obviously they're going to want to be profitable for shareholders' sake, but there's a lot of other things that they can do to ease the burden that a cow calf guy could. A guy with 100 cows cannot write down the same way that someone like Tyson can write down the closure of an entire beef plant, which is probably a 50 to $100 million write down. It's like, oh, we lost money. Oh, we're gonna have to shut this down. Oh, that's tough. It's real tough, guys. We have it really tough out here. So I don't feel any sympathy for the Packers. Never have. So yeah, man,
This
that's all on
show
the
is
news.
brought. Yeah,
Keep going.
this show is brought to you by AgriFinancial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of AgriFinancial or their team.
So my question for you: data centers. I posted that video of the data centers on
Yeah.
TikTok yesterday, and people said I was wrong. And I sat there and I didn't make a video. I didn't want to make a video. I didn't want to get too feisty on TikTok because I do that sometimes.
You know,
I think everyone who's against data centers should not be allowed to use their phones or ChatGPT anymore. If you are against data centers, you are not allowed to use the things that actively are requiring data center energy.
I think a lot of people think that the data centers are going to be used for things other than data, like spying, possibly, or
Which is already
recording.
happening. The data centers don't need to be built for that to happen.
No, I don't think it does. I think that if they are doing that with nefarious purposes, that's it's being done without the data center. So I think data centers are completely tied to the use of technology that or is in people's hands every day: laptops, iPads, phones, streaming, shows like this. I mean, it
Mhm.
requires a lot of processing, and those that processing is happening in those data centers.
Yeah, it's having it like and it's making our lives in terms of consumption easier. Think about 15 years ago, the ability to stream movies to your phone. Like, just think about that. Think about Netflix 15 years ago. You used to have to order Netflix on a disc in the mail. I remember that. I used to get discs in the mail that I could watch, and that's what Netflix was. And they figured out how to stream it over the interwebs to us. And you know what that required? Data centers. This live show is the highest quality live stream that happens in the agriculture industry on a Thursday, for that matter. And it only happens because this is all going through a data center right now. This incredibly high quality media only happens because of a data center. So the word I used last week was virtue signaling. And I still 100% agree with that. There's just so much virtue signaling around all this. It's like, guys, I get it. I'm not for bulldozing all the farmland for data centers. I'm saying that the data centers are going to be built if you keep using the technology you're using. Even if you say you don't want it, AI is going to affect your life. Even if you're not using it now, you will. You sound like they sound like you sound like someone who hated the car when it came out, or you hated the internet when it came out, or you hated smartphones when they came out. You know what? You have a car, you have a smartphone, you use the internet every day. Like, it's just, it just the hypocrisy drives me insane. It's just,
Yeah,
it's
I mean, and people are, like I think people are up in arms about saying, "Well, we want to protect our local businesses." Well, then quit ordering off Walmart and Amazon, because they're another of the two people that are, or the two companies that are building these data centers because so many people are ordering their services.
uh huh.
If we went back to local shopping, then we could eliminate some data centers. But as long as people are choosing to buy their products off the internet, and I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, but it's definitely happening. So to say that you don't want data center and then get on Amazon and order your 2-minute package or to
Yeah.
Walmart or whatever, I mean, you're not. It's very difficult to say I don't want a data center and then go to Amazon 2 minutes later.
Yeah, you don't want a data center. You want small businesses in your town, but you're not willing to spend money at small businesses in town. It's like I don't know what to tell anyone because I'm for all those things too, but I'm also for you saying things and your wallet following what you're saying. And that's the problem is people's wallets do not follow what they say and what they preach.
It's
Like if you don't
definitely
keep
Go
going.
ahead. Oh,
Uh,
it's definitely costs you more money to shop local, but I mean, you're benefiting your local business owner, and you're keeping data centers from being built.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. So if you have a problem with data centers, delete your Amazon account. Don't shop at Walmart. Get rid of your phone while you're at it. Turn off this live stream right now because you're using so much energy to watch
Don't
this
do
live.
that.
Just kidding. Yeah, watch our live stream forever. Yeah, it's just that it's yeah, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop myself. I'm gonna stop myself. But also, if someone knocked on your door and they said, "I'll buy your farm for like $100,000 an acre," I'm sorry. Everyone who protests that. I like that's my biggest argument actually. If someone showed up at your door tomorrow, Neil, and said, "I'll buy all of your farmland for 5x what you could sell it for at auction right now," you're telling me that you wouldn't take that? Like most people, when push comes to shove, they're gonna take that deal.
I'm
100%.
holding
So
out.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, and this is my last comment, then we'll move on. The people who are mad about data centers are just mad that they live in fricking Saskatchewan, Canada, and no one wants to build a data center in Saskatchewan. Sorry
This
that your
show,
family settled in a place where people don't wanna build data centers.
we're getting in the weeds.
I
If
just
you're in Saskatchewan, continue to watch our live stream.
yeah, I actually Actually, if I look at a map of farmland that I would wanna farm some of this heritage wheat stuff we're growing, it would be North Dakota and Saskatchewan, so I'm actually a big fan of those areas, mostly because it's big and it's flat and it's cheaper than everywhere else.
This show is brought to you by AgriFinancial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of AgriFinancial or their team.
Yeah. I'm looking at some land on, peoples.com right now. Let's see, $2.2 million for how many acres? For 127 acres. What's that work out to per acre? $2.2 million divided by 127. This is right on the edge of town, by the way. That's at $17,000 an acre in Minnesota, which could be worse. But if a data center were to be built there, that would be $50,000 an acre. So that's all I'm saying is that, like, if you're the guy who has this land listed, you're gonna sell it to the data center that's gonna offer double. So, yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult to tell somebody not to, make a life-changing amount of money on a land sale. So, I mean, I think that we should preserve, you know, we could fix this problem by zoning. That's
Yeah.
that's something that people need to consider is like if you don't want data centers um, in certain areas, then zone them out, but then allow them in areas that are less productive or less ecological impacts. Things like that. We can be
Well,
smart about this. And you
I'll
also, you said they can be, right now they're being built horizontally because land is cheap versus infrastructure. But if we wanted to, we could probably regulate them into building vertically, and that should, fix some of this problem.
My only pushback to that is zoning can be changed. I know because zoning changes in our city, it feels like you can make it happen if you're willing to push it. I think my pushback on that would be zoning can always change. And even if you vote on it, we live in a democracy, but especially when you get to that like state and county level, a lot of things can get swept under the rug at that level. And that does happen. I would say better than zoning would be better federal and state conservation and farmland, easements. There are certain legal frameworks that do allow farmland to be put into either a trust or a certain conservation type easement. And so having some sort of farmland easement exception where you can like, hey, like this is locked in for agricultural land for the next 120 years or something. Like we don't have good frameworks for that at the federal or state level right now. I think that would solve a lot of people's concerns. So that's my only pushback to all of that is like, yeah, like zoning helps, but we need like if we really want to preserve farmland, we need to be able to do it for 100 years, not 5 years, not whoever's in this legislation. It's like if you really want to protect farmland, you need to be willing to do stuff like that. So there are trusts in several different states that are working on that, where basically you can say, I'm going to put my farmland in this basically nonprofit trust that keeps it protected from development and then can be rented out outside of that. So yeah, there's, plenty of other options that should be worked into federal and state law. So, that's my opinion.
This show is brought to you by AgriFinancial, your go-to for custom financing solutions in the ag industry. If you need land, equipment, buildings, or bins, check out their website or give them a call. Just a reminder, any opinions on the show are ours and do not necessarily reflect those of AgriFinancial or their team. So we're about to have a guest come on the show. We're going to have Mr. Jim Mundorf with Lonesome Lands. If you're familiar with his podcast, great podcast about the beef industry and the cattle industry. A little bit of background about Mr. Jim is he is a fifth generation rancher. He's an artist. He's a podcaster. I got a chance to meet him and his partner on his podcast a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C. Great people, lots of insight in the cattle industry. We're excited to have him. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Jim.
Jim's not on yet, you gotta wait.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, uh,
Yeah, we gotta wait a second. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to Jim. I've seen his stuff on social media for years now, like, yeah, quite some time. So I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah. Okay, now we're good. Welcome to the show, Jim. How's it going, Jim? Can you hear us? Oh,
It looks like he's muted.
Jim, can you hear us?
He is not. Oh, maybe he hears us now. You hear
Can you
us
hear us?
now, Jim?
Thumbs down. He can see us. Can you see us? Jim? Jim, is your output set correctly? Nothing. Oh, he's gone. Sometimes that
Yeah.
happens. I don't know what that is.
Yep. Hopefully he'll be back with us soon. So, yeah, it was it, very neat person. I was looking at some of his stuff last night on the internet. He does like Longhorn art, so like those skulls and different uh things with the Longhorn type theme, and very cool stuff. Jimmy Harris now. Yeah. So we've got yeah, no worries. We got your
Oh,
introduction done. Everybody knows it, and we're excited to have you. Um, yeah, just tell us. I've introduced you, but you can tell us a little bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, I'm Jim
hey,
Mundorf,
wait, wait. Pause
Southwest.
1 second. You got to pause 1 second. Working with
Okay.
our producer here to get this all figured out. Make sure you're live.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
There you go. Now you're good.
I'm up.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I'm Jim Mundorf, Southwest Iowa. Um, Born and raised on we raised corn, soybeans, and cattle. Um, and a few years ago, I guess I started Lonesome Lands, where I was mainly writing back then, kind of like a blog as they existed back in the day. And it's just kind of transitioned into more YouTube podcasts, video type stuff. So
Nice.
that's
Yeah.
where I'm at now.
Did not know you were in Iowa until like an hour ago. So I'm very
Yeah.
happy about that. And that you
Yeah.
went to UNI, which is
Yeah.
literally 5 minutes
Yeah.
down the street from me. So
All right. Yeah. I went to UNI for communication. So I got out of there and kind of, went to work. I've worked kind of part time on the farm while starting my own businesses and doing different stuff like that. And then I started Lonesome Lands um, as kind of an ag media thing. So I hadn't done anything. I was a journalism minor, communication major, and really didn't do anything with that until I just started this deal. So
nice. Um, yeah. So we talk a lot about cattle on this show, and Neil
hmm
and I know very little about cattle. It's actually a real problem. Uh,
yeah,
every time we talk about it, I feel like I'm pretending to be an expert. I feel like I'm a
yeah,
Californian trying to legislate something. Like, I'm like talking really confidently, like I know what's going on, when in reality I have no idea what's going on. And that yeah. So we needed an expert to come on.
oh,
So
you sound like a media person, right? Like, don't
I'm
let knowing anything slow you down, right?
I'm formerly a Californian, so I'm allowed to make fun of Californians. And I also am a media person and I can spin a
Right,
lot of
yeah,
things and make it sound a lot more official than it is. So Jim,
right.
what do we need to know about the cattle industry that is different than the row crop industry? Like, what are the fundamental differences? Because we all fit into the agricultural umbrella, but there's a pretty good divide between a row cropper and a rancher, and do not get them mixed up. If you call a farmer a rancher, or you call
Oh yeah,
actually the ranchers are the picky one. If you call a rancher a farmer, they get pissed like every
right,
time. If you call someone who is a rancher a farmer, they will be like, "No, I'm a rancher. Don't call me a farmer." There's just
right.
this like, age old like feud that like is subtly going on all the time. So explain to us what that difference is.
Yeah, well, I think it's where you live pretty much. I'm kind of close to the edge. I'm about 20 miles from Nebraska. So if you get over there in Nebraska, they all want to be ranchers, I guess, no matter if, even if they're raising hay most of the year, and I've heard plenty of ranchers talk about really what they are is grass farmers. And when the truth comes down to it, that's their main concern is growing something that their cattle can eat.
Mm,
They're dealing with it definitely out in western Nebraska right now with uh, Everything they've grown is kind of burnt up. So, yeah, and getting into, we talk a lot of policy and get into politics a lot. And so I think what the ranchers would say is the difference between them and row crop farmers is they're not getting government checks all the time.
We were literally
so
just talking about that of like, if we want the cow calf herd to be built back up in America, maybe we should talk about some redistribution of subsidies because
right, yeah.
obviously it's way easier to get out of cows and into corn when corn writes you a check every year, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it is, it's something that I hopefully will get looked at soon. And I'm not saying, it's hard to come up with the answers. I guess I tweeted out yesterday, with they released the White House fraud detection thing, and I said, I wonder how many farmers are getting nervous here. Because there is so much money available in the grain farming, and I don't really, I'm not going to pretend to understand that, and how that all works. I, like I said, I'm pretty much hired hand on my family's deal, and don't get that into all that stuff. But I know there's a lot of guys who try to work it, you know, work it the best they can, and have as many family members owning land and different things like that. But
Yep.
yeah, so I guess to get back in the cattle deal, you're talking about what to pay attention to. What's in the news now is this suspension of the TRQs. I don't know if you've brought that up. Tariff rate quota is it's the rumor this week, and that's what we've been talking about. So, all the imports have a quota on their tariffs, or on how much they bring in. The big one everyone watches is Brazil, and they
Mhm.
had a quota of 50,000 metric tons for the year. And once they hit that quota, their tariff was 26.4%, I believe. They hit that quota in 6 days this year. So the whole year, pretty much, they've been charged 26% tariff. And the rumors went out last week that Trump might just end those. And so, that's what's kind of being watched right now. But the market
Interesting.
is up today and has been all week, and we're looking at record highs like we are constantly, it seems like. And so hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I was making fun of Neil because Neil bought some cows last week. He sent me a photo of
yeah,
them, just no text, and I said, Only a row cropper would buy cows at the absolute peak of the market." Like, I don't know how much farther it can go up, but I think Neil's gonna regret that decision in the next 12 months.
Nah,
I was
I'm in
just
for the
sitting there,
long
I was
haul.
like, "Oh gosh, this guy is a great grain trader, but he clearly has never touched a live animal in his life."
Actually, I have. It's just been 20 years. So
yeah,
no,
No,
I'm
I
building
love
for the
making fun of Neil for,
next.
I just
I'm building
can't.
for the next generation. I have a son coming up that wants to be in row crop, and I don't feel like there's a great future in row crop. So I mean, he's 10 years from being able to have his own herd. He's just 10, you're 9, but I hope in 10 years I have a herd big enough that he can, if he chooses to take the agriculture route, which I clearly hope he does, that he'll have an option other than row crop farming, which I feel like doesn't have a great future in comparison to the
yeah.
cattle trade.
Yeah, and you probably grew up like a lot of us, our age. I guess I don't know how old you are, but that grew up on more diversified farms, right?
Oh
Like when
yeah.
I was a kid, my grandpa had pigs. We fed cattle, and then we had the cow calf herd.
Yeah.
Now we don't have pigs. We don't feed anything except for, we do sell some beef directly off our place, which we've just started now feeding out and finishing Mundorf Heritage beef, I guess, if anybody wants some. But yeah, and so, it's just we've kind of, and especially you see all your neighbors, my brother talks about the school bus. There was cows and pigs behind every house at every barn, and now those lots have been plowed up, and
Sure.
it's just corn and soybeans. And when you get prices like this, people are kind of stuck, and then the government ends up, like, we go back, the government ends up sending out checks just to keep people afloat because that's all they have is corn and soybeans. So
Yeah, I'm 50, and here in my area, Kentucky, when I was young, I mean, tobacco was the dominant cash crop. Of course, they, did away with tobacco, but we had
mhm.
cattle, dairy, pigs, small scale chicken. Now it's large scale chicken and poultry here. But we also had some vegetable crops growing in this area of Kentucky, and pretty much all those things went out the door as the '90s commodity rally happened, and the tobacco, base was cut, so our farms couldn't grow it. With the rise of the commodity industry, the cattle were sold off and the fences were taken out. And now I think you're starting to see the reverse opposite of that.
Hmm.
Poultry has taken the state by storm, but Kentucky still has a large beef herd. It's just east of the Tennessee River. But I believe, in time you'll see it come back to this west end of the state. And you're definitely seeing, like, we have small operators now doing pasture raised pig to
Hmm.
sell direct to consumer, and our vegetable crops coming back. So tobacco has not come back yet, but our state ag commissioner is working on that. And I hope that we see a return to a more diversified farm again.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the popular sentiment. And I think, it's fun to laugh at you getting in, but as far as cattle goes, to bring up the reason we're seeing record high prices is because we just don't have the supply. And it takes a
Yeah,
long time to build up that supply when it comes to cattle. And so, and now we have an ag secretary, right? That's where me and Neil met, is in Washington, D.C., who said, I mean, she has said, I would love to see the US not import any beef and raise it all here. And they're opening up grazing lands and all that kind of stuff. So I think as consumers get more and more informed, and we go forward, hopefully we can, the demand is also as high as it's ever been too. And so we've been able to keep these high prices, and people are paying more for beef because they understand more about the nutrition and how good it is for you. And so I think there is a bright future. It's just the tough. I mean, it's like this TRQ thing, and the cattle guys are just always waiting to get their head chopped off, pretty much in the market. And that's,
Yeah.
I mean, now we're at yesterday they're talking 265 for fat cattle in some places in Nebraska, like these fat cattle auctions. And so it's a tricky business to get into, but
Yeah.
I think there's a bright future.
I think there's a bright future, but I also think we talk about more diversified farms. It's like, I think we all like the idea of that, but that's why I'm saying we need some sort of carrot and stick for,
Right.
like, Neil's in Kentucky, which is not like the heart. I'm in the Corn Belt. If someone came to me tomorrow and said, I'm going to take out some of my corn ground to put cows in, every person in the county would say you're crazy. Like, there's guys who like are probably going to
Mhm,
try that and do it, but there's a reason every pasture has been turned into a cornfield here in Iowa. It's because it's just
mhm,
no one wants to deal. I told Neil that when he got cows, and I was like, Neil, you're stressed enough from farming. Now you own cows, you know. And so it's one of those things. I like the idea of it, and I think if you're a smaller operator, I think it's really appealing. But I think if at least where I live in Iowa, if you're a big guy, like that you're either going big into cattle or you're gonna touch it. You're just like, I'm gonna let
oh,
someone else
yeah,
deal. So I
and
I I think there needs to be some sort of uh no, I don't even like I hate subsidies. I don't say we need more subsidies. Um, but like I feel like there does need to be some sort of financial incentive for guys to get into it. Like I'm starting more farming in Iowa, and it's like, okay, well, what incentive do I have to put cattle out here over a crop? Zero. There's zero incentive as
well,
is, unless
$4 corn might be an incentive.
that's definitely an incentive.
yes, and I'm not farming corn, I'm specifically farming wheat, and everyone thinks I'm
Oh,
crazy because of it, but it's true, but it's the same thing. It's like if I did cows instead of wheat, everyone would say the same thing. It's like, "Well, why don't you just grow corn or soybeans?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's because corn and soybeans aren't making any money right now because y'all paid $30,000 an acre for all your land 2 years ago." Like,
mhm,
there's that, like, tension of, like, there's no backup plan for the cow-calf guys, whereas row crop guys, the backup plan is the federal government. So,
Yeah. I do
yeah,
think, as like we are liable to see $1,000 a ton phosphate, and $600 or $700 a ton nitrogen. And I think that is also another incentive to be in the beef industry. If we see those fertilizer prices continue to rally based off lessening world supplies, it's a lot. That's a big incentive to put cattle on your place.
mhm,
yeah. So we just got
yeah,
a question in one of our chats. What is our outlook on farming in the long term? So 8 to 10 years, up or down, or stable and growing?
You know,
I feel like this
Jim,
is a
I'll say
crowd
what you think
process.
about this, but I'll bet you that you're going to see the cattle herd expand and the row crop acre contract. That's my thoughts.
I'd second that.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope. I mean, that's what I hope. It's interesting the way you talk. We're in an area where you can raise a pair on like 1 to 2 acres. And I know a lot of guys who takes 50 acres, to raise a pair. And so,
Yep.
we are in a way more efficient area. But and the federal government they're expanding. Rollins has done a lot. They're opening up, I think, 2.5 million new grazing acres. A lot of that kind of stuff. But it is tenuous. Like I said, and Nebraska burnt up 1 million acres here
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. And so, but yeah, it's really an interesting time when you talk about subsidies and the direction things are going. When you have somebody like RFK as the human health secretary, you have all these conversations around glyphosate, and that those different things. It's
Mm.
really kind of hard to tell, but I feel like there is kind of a push for people to diversify more.
Yeah.
Um,
I would
Yeah.
agree.
I was gonna say, if we look in the 10-year term, cropland and farmland in the U.S. percentage wise will decline. Development will continue to be a thing. So already we're looking at less farmland available, which means higher land prices. So if you're already a holder, great for you. On the flip side, our population is not growing as fast as it used to be, and worldwide though, the population is still growing. So if our population is continuing to grow, we still have a need for more food production. So we're going to have to increase the food unit per acre output, regardless of farmland amount, which means, hey, if you can, there is an upward trajectory because what we have is still in demand. That's the beauty of ag is food is always in demand. So as long as food's in demand, I think the industry will continue to grow in some way. I think though, like you're saying, like the up and down, like if we're gonna play the commodity game, for sure, up and down. Like it's gonna be up and down. That's how commodities work. Supplies go down, we have higher prices, we produce more, too much, prices go down, same thing. But the diversified route, Jim, I agree with you. Like there is a huge push for healthy foods, and even like us in the Midwest, we're kind of insulated from it because everyone is kind of still okay eating from Casey's half the time. But you go out to the coast or you go to DC, I mean, everyone's way health conscious. They think a lot about what they put in their body, and people spend more on food in those areas. And so I think we'll continue to see if you can be diversified and offer a healthier product than what the commodity guy grows. I mean, there's endless upward trajectory for you. You just have to learn a lot of other skills other than farming, like marketing, distribution, and like you're learning that probably doing some of your direct consumer stuff. It's just like there's a whole set of skills that you have to learn in addition to farming to capture some of that value. So,
yeah.
what were you saying, Neil?
I was just curious. I heard him say he was going the direct to consumer route, and I was curious. Like, talk to the people listening about some of the challenges you faced with that so far. Like what has been the difference between just selling to your sale barn versus trying to go direct to the consumer.
Yeah, well, I guess we went this route in 2005. I think we were doing the farmers market thing. We were actually selling online, which was really early. We were, 15 years early. Like if we'd have been doing it in 2020 during COVID, we'd have made a killing. But yeah, I mean, the challenge, I think a lot of people don't realize the challenges. And when my brother came to me, it's mainly my brother and my nephew that are doing the direct marketing. I haven't been involved that much. And they came to me and were like, "Do you want to get involved?" And I remembered 2005, and I'm sitting at a desk way more than I want to already, and so I was like, "Yeah, I'll help out when I can, but I can't really commit to it." And because it is not, for me, it was not a fun process. But you talk about the challenges, like back then, we have a USDA inspected plant closer to us now. I mean, I think that's one of the bigger challenges that, to go back to current events, it's in the Farm Bill, the Prime Act. I believe if that passes, you won't have to have a USDA plant. You won't have to have USDA inspected to ship nationwide, which is across
Oh,
state lines.
Interesting.
But back then, like I said, I'm 20
Yeah.
minutes from Omaha, Nebraska, and that's where we were selling across the state line. So we had to drive our cattle, I think, 3 hours to a plant to a little locker in Nebraska that was USDA inspected.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people who do the direct to consumer. I think it's gotten a little better now because more people have opened up smaller processing plants, but
Hmm.
a lot of it is 2.5 hours to get it slaughtered at least, and then you
Hmm.
leave and you have to come back 2.5 hours later.
Hmm.
If you plan it right, you can bring more in, but it's a lot. It's like, yep, we make one load where we drop everything off, and then we just drive the car out and we go pick up our load of beef, and then we bring it all back, and we've driven 10 hours by the time we're done just to get one
Hmm.
cow. And it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
Yeah. And then the
I think we're
shipping and the marketing, and I mean, there is
yeah.
just there's always, a lot of people got into this and during COVID, and I was like, I hope you know what you're getting into, and a lot of them are out of it by now,
yeah,
because it is just there is so much stuff that you don't even think about.
yeah.
The keeping up with emails and phone calls, and when you're dealing with customers, it's a whole different deal than walking out the
I
back
would
door and
I'd
not
say
knowing
anyone
the
who
answer.
works in the commodity market who that's the number one question I've gotten about this heritage grain we're growing here is like, "Well, where are you gonna sell it?" And I was like, "Well, the normal farmer mindset is you just take it to the terminal or the packer where you can get like that's the mindset. Is like, oh, you can just always take it there and they'll give you a price. You can pretty much like it's always more or
Mhm,
less available. And I think that's the big shift that I think a lot of people who want to diversify have to have that mindset is like, hey, that market doesn't just like you can't just show up and drop it off at the door and they write you a check. Like there's a whole process that has to go in if you want to do things off market, private contract, direct to consumer. There's a whole that you have to start up a whole company basically, run a
mhm.
business. But if farming's a business and you want variables you can control, well, you're going to have to start controlling variables like marketing and who your customer is and things like that. And so, mad respect to anyone who can pull it off because it is a lot of work. It is a
Yeah.
huge uplift. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think marketing's a big part of that. Like, unless you have a platform, I mean, if you have a platform already built, that's a plus for your business. But if you don't have one built, it's a whole process of getting that up and running so you can sell more than just to your neighbor next door. And it's just a time consuming type of thing. And then the customer has to like your product too.
mhm.
So it's a whole
Yeah.
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
we buy a quarter beef every year, and the only reason like, it's expensive now, like, now that beef prices are where they're at, like, buying a quarter of beef is not a small check to write anymore,
Mhm,
uh, but it's one of those things, like, the quality is so much better than when I buy at the store that I am hooked at the point where it's like, "Yeah, I will pay whatever my buddy needs because I like this beef way more than what I can buy at the store," it's like having good ground beef and steaks in the freezer 24/7 is like, "Oh, yeah, like, why wouldn't I keep paying for that?" But it takes a long time to it takes sometimes 2 years to convince someone that that's a worthy investment, and then they only buy from you, what, once, twice a year, maybe if you're lucky.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and growing up with cattle, you don't kind of realize what I don't know. I'll run out of ground beef sometimes and have to go buy some at the store, and I can't hardly eat it because I mean, and it's as cattle guys, you never want to run down beef anytime, but yeah, it's like there's just such a big difference, and the price difference to me for the quality you're getting. You're right though. To change. They say the change in marketing. They say changing people's buying habits is the hardest thing to do, and that's
Mhm.
what you're tasked with doing. When someone can go there at the grocery store anyway, they can throw it in their cart. So you really have to focus on those things, and I think quality is the easy thing to focus on for home raised beef.
Agree.
100%.
I think people are, I think more and more, and I think this is helpful when they flip the food pyramid and showed, everybody that it's healthy to eat meat. And people, I think, especially the newer generations, are more health conscious.
Mhm.
So if you can give people, hey, I've been raising this cow, very healthfully. The meat is safe to eat. You can feel confident about consuming our product on our locally grown ranch acre. Um, just as people become more and more conscious of that type of decision, I think it will get easier, but it's still a difficult. hurdle, just say, just flipping somebody's habits. When they have a mindset over the last 25 years to go to Walmart every time they buy a pound of hamburger meat to go to your local ranch, or you're 50 mile outside your urban area to buy the beef.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd say, and I was gonna say, like, I think that that will continue to be a challenge regardless. Like, even if your product is better, the convenience of the grocery store is always gonna be a massive appeal to so many people, and so, I think continuing to remove barriers to make it easier for higher quality products to get into grocery stores, simpler, making it easier, like, that whole regulatory process, condensing that down, making it easier is something that, like, you know, our American farmers and ranchers need a lot. It's one of those things like you said, but changing a buying habit is super hard. And like there's a app that keeps showing up in my Instagram feed where it's like buy directly from your local farmers and ranchers. I'm like, yes, I love that. Here's the problem: 99% of the population is never going to do that because it's still more convenient to do a Walmart pickup order than it is to go to farm by farm by farm by farm and buy everything you need. And now that
Yeah.
Amazon in the cities is starting to do grocery too, like Amazon's coming for the grocery store. And when you tell people, yeah, you can order all your groceries on Amazon, it's going to show up at your door just like your Amazon packages do. Like you're telling me that everyone's going to be able to do direct to consumer. It's like it's a hard appeal. It's going to be hard for people to do that. Now maybe it'll get easier because maybe you can be an Amazon listed seller and people can just throw your meat in their grocery cart and it shows up at your door. Like that's the dream. But who knows what's gonna happen? The government will do something. Jim, I know you're probably working on stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's I think all we got for you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, lonesomelands.com or, YouTube. That's kind of our main place is YouTube where we have the most subscribers, but we're trying Instagram. I was like, "Oh, you guys you guys have got Instagram figured out. We're terrible at it." But pretty much Lonesome Lands anywhere, all the social media
We
and
should hop on
all
a
that
call
stuff.
because we constantly feel like we don't have YouTube figured out. So
Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, I think I got in earlier than others, so which was helpful, but it was also during the kind of the market crashes of 2019 and COVID is when we got in, and there was a lot of people really interested in what was going on. So I got on there and was telling people, and it kind of took off. So
yeah.
W-
Well, yeah,
One more
everyone go.
thing.
Oh, keep
One
going.
more thing before he jumps off here. I just want him to talk a little bit about his art. I'm assuming that's yours behind you there that you've made.
no, that one's actually that's like inspiration, I guess. That one's probably I'm guessing over 100 years old. It comes out of the Sioux
Wow.
City. Yeah, Sioux City Stockyards, but yeah, the
That's cool.
droverhouse.com is the business I ran for I started it in 2005 too. So I'm over 20 years there where and then I'm kind of transitioned with Lonesome Lands, but I am still doing that. I build longhorn mounts and chairs and sculptures and all that kind of stuff.
That's
You
super
can see
cool.
it there.
That is super cool. That
So
is
give yourself one more plug. Where does everybody find you? And if you want some of that Longhorn art, how do you get it?
Yeah, that's the droverhouse.com, and I'm on a wait list now, so it's harder to get because I'm spending all my time trying to build Lonesome Lands. But yeah, you go to that website, and you can see everything kind of I build and do there.
Yep.
Thanks for
All right.
joining us, Jim. We
Yeah.
appreciate
Go
it.
Thank
go
you guys.
go find him on
Appreciate it.
all the social medias. Thanks for coming, Jim. We appreciate you.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too.
Sweet. That's awesome. We need to hang out with cattle guys more often, Neil. That needs to be a priority for
I,
us.
I
So
enjoyed meeting him and Shad in Washington. It was fun.
yeah. Yeah, you're out. So now on to some other news
See
that
ya.
we've got going on. Uh this happened yesterday, and so Neil and I were discussing this week. We actually had a pretty low key news week, and so we were like, "What are we going to talk about tomorrow?" Um, and then E15 regulation got moved last night, which is a kind of a big deal because people have been talking about it for a really long time. Yeah, so it's one of those things that I actually feel like I know a lot less. All I know is that I don't want us to grow more corn. That's what I do know. But what I do know is I also don't like red tape and regulation. So we're gonna have one of Neil's childhood friends, Brandon Hunt, join us in a few seconds. What intro would you give Brandon, Neil?
I would give Brandon an intro. Kentucky farmer. Him and his family are one of the greatest Kentucky farm families that you'll find. Um, his granddad. He'll have to probably tell you the exact story of how the farm started, but I think his granddad was his granddad very early in the operation. Also, um, his granddad is just an icon in Kentucky agriculture in general. He's owns H&R AgriPower. Brandon's dad currently runs it, but Mr. Wayne is very much still involved in the whole entire family business. Brandon's the farmer. His dad is the runs the business, and I would say Wayne is the godfather, watching over everything. And I've got to be good friends with Wayne too. He's an amazing individual. I think he's in his 80s. He's still sharper than a tack. And what I like most about Mr. Wayne is he will tell you exactly where he stands right to your face. You'll never be wondering where you stand in his eyes. He's a very honest man, uh, very much one of the most integral people I've ever met, and I love to call him my friend. So Brandon's also national corn grower on the national corn grower board. So that's
That is the
that's my
longest
intro for
intro we've
Brandon.
ever had for a
Yeah.
guest ever. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
I was sitting there waiting. I don't know, Clay. We may have trouble. You said we don't need to grow any more corn. That wasn't a good way to start.
Well, this show would not be a good show if I wasn't honest about my feelings. So
I
here we are.
respect that, and I know.
Well, Brandon, welcome to Atlas Ag News. We have some things to discuss about ethanol, some big moves yesterday, and it sounds like you were in Washington yesterday working on those big moves. So tell us what happened with E15. What's the backstory? What happened yesterday? Why is this a big deal?
Great day to be an American corn farmer today. It's been a long road to get to today, and it was a blessing to be a part of the approach. As you know, so many have come and went as we've been advocating to make our ethanol industry more robust, and we got a shot to do that yesterday. Right? You know, it's not a done deal. It's not over. It's maybe I guess you could also say that maybe the fight's still just begun, but we're halfway across that hill in DC. So it was a great day to be associated with our industry. Not that there's ever a bad day, but yesterday was a really cool experience, and a lot of really cool things happen um, in the organizations that represent us. And yesterday was one of the good ones. So
Got it. So what was the reason E15 could not be year round before?
it's a regulation. It's a regulatory issue. It has to do with breed vapor pressure, and we don't have to get too terribly in the weeds because technicalities aren't always fun. But at a high level, RVP is what keeps the ethanol blend from going up from E10 to E15. So, that RVP level's been in the RFS from since inception, and have to increase the blends of ethanol has to be adjusted. And so this is simply just a regulatory fix to increase the blend rate of ethanol into the gasoline from E10 to E15. So merely a deregulatory initiative, which you would think in some regards, based on the political sphere today, that would be a relatively easy climb, but it has not been. Um, but hey, we climbed it yesterday.
Yeah, so like what's the opposition to it? Is it just purely because it's built into the renewable fuels thing that it's like, oh, it's just too much work to change? Or like why has it been such a hurdle to get past?
So yeah, I mean that's part of it. I think there's some separation amongst people for the reasons they are against it. Part of that is because of the RFS, just because the RFS is the law of a mandate. You know, gasoline has to have a blend rate of 10% today, and that's the law. So
Mhm.
sure, there's people that are not fond of that approach, and to each their own, and respect their opinions. And then you've got a lot of pressure inside the oil industry at the refinery level that's really made a mess of this thing. Um, and are a very loud opponent, even though there's not, um, the coalition of refineries that were in support of this is overwhelming. But as I spoke to one of the congressional officers yesterday, there's about five or six mid-sized refiners that can float the system inside the RFS with the 10% levels today,
Mhm.
and file for exemptions. The law has an exemption status in it that can be petitioned for through EPA, and they've gotten really good at making sure they qualify for those exemptions. So when those
Mm.
exemptions are issued through EPA, because there's a gallons of ethanol that have to be used each year based off the RVO numbers, then those gallons get reallocated back in the market for people that are doing it the way the law was intended. They have to eat
Mhm.
those gallons. So it's
Mm.
been kind of a disagreement amongst the refiners how those things need to be handled, and so the
Mm.
coalition has been formed between corn farmers and a vast majority of the refining industry and the ethanol industry, and kind of what got us here today was a broad scope coalition of approach that we could all agree on to move forward with. And yesterday was one half the vote to get it into reality.
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna get E15 across the finish line, right now is a great time to do it with oil. Just continuing, its upward trajectory. I mean, I think you could possibly see like $200 a barrel oil. So, um, like what? I'm assuming that the Senate fight is going to be tough, um, based off of very powerful senators from the oil producing states. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely, there's several oil patch Republicans on that side of the hill. So, yeah, it's not going to be an easy win by any means. But I think today, more than anything, while of course I'm advocating for us as a farmer, Neil Clayton, but you know, this was yesterday was an affordability play for the U.S. consumer because
Well, that was going to be my question
E15
is,
is going to lower the price of gasoline at the pump.
Yes.
And for the people that don't appreciate the mandate, the law part of the RFS, that's great. This isn't a mandate. This isn't a law change. This is a deregulatory measure
Mhm.
to allow the retailers to offer a better priced product for the American consumer.
Mhm.
I just don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know any other way to explain it. That it's kind of a no brainer. Obviously, yes, as high as gas prices are right now, it's going to get attention. But the spread between um, E15 and E10 is still going to be relevant at whatever the gas price is.
Well, I was
Yeah,
gonna
I
say,
mean,
like, that's my biggest opposition to ethanol. Only the forced regulation to create demand. Deregulation, I'm totally fine with because I do think let the market decide. Like that's the reality. And I'm sure the big oil guys, I mean, big oil is going to be big oil and try to make sure that they always have as much control as possible. That's
Mhm.
got plenty of evidence and history for that. But it's I think if it's one of those things where it's just regulatory, like we should all be for E15 purely because it will allow us as the consumer to decide what we want to put in our vehicle at the pump versus, yeah, you only have the option like that. And that's not happening. This is just hey, remove some red tape to make it easier for people to buy the blend versus, hey, because it's only summer right now, right? Or is it only winter?
No,
Yeah.
no, there's
Yeah, it's only
summertime
summer.
waivers in place. They've passed them for, I think it's the last three administrations, including this one, because we just got a new round for this summer's waivers. Trump one did it, Biden did it, Trump two's done it up to this point. So, um, yeah, and then we've got some opt out states that are already. I mean, Clayton, you're in one that's an opt out state, right? E15 is available all over Iowa.
It is 100%. What else are we gonna do? We are just a giant cornfield.
Right.
Yeah.
y-
Yeah.
so I'm curious, like handicap the chances of E15 crossing the Senate finish line.
Who I'm not wanting to call my shot today, Neil. I'm trying to relish in a small victory. I think and we demonstrated that yesterday, which was another cool thing in that town. Not a whole lot of bipartisan stuff moves through the legislation right now, and
Mhm.
yesterday was still a showing of precedent that our country has the ability to have a bipartisan issue and support something that makes sense and is good governance. So It was cool to see that yesterday. We have that in the Senate as well. Um, we've got ethanol champions over there that have been with this issue and have been with our industry for a long time on ethanol. Um, I don't know if you saw it, but Speaker Thune stepped into a hearing on fertilizer prices, and he made mention of it right out of the gate that in the Ag Committee. Um, I'm not saying I'm not predicting the future, but I am cautiously optimistic that we're going to continue the same trend we started yesterday in the Senate, and we've got great champions over there on both sides of the aisle that I know they will. They're gonna pull their weight to make sure we get there. So I think
Yeah,
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'll go there.
and we
Yeah.
think, if we're thinking, if we're thinking legislation wise, anything a politician can do that makes it seem like they're trying to help the consumer save money in the economy that we're quote unquote in right now, like whatever place we're in, if there's a way that people can posture themselves to look as, hey, we're trying to help lower prices on these things across the board, politicians are for that, because even if it doesn't actually change anything, it makes them look good. And so things like this, I think, are encouraging to see, just because it's like, okay, like, yeah, oil prices are super high right now. There's a way we can lower it at the pump, keep our people happy, keep them from revolting a little bit longer. Politicians are going to want to follow through that. Why don't you explain to me a little bit more? You sit on Kentucky corn growers. Like, what is the whole lobbying and like advocating process look like in Washington from your point of view? Like, what do your trips look like? Like, what are you trying to accomplish while you're there? Who are you talking to? What's a week in DC like this last one look like for you?
Well, so all of them may be a little different. This one, the last two. So I was in town, a little less than 2 weeks ago during the Farm Bill vote week, because at the time E15 was hitched to the Farm Bill to move across the House floor. And then, things changed and it got set aside and left, and they voted on the Farm Bill, passed the Farm Bill. And then E15, the deal cutting that was made got its vote yesterday. Was the agreement made on the floor that night? So the last 2 weeks, you have to tell the story the way it needs to be told. And on an issue like this, and there's some division, in voices that were telling things and saying things and making connections on the Hill that weren't
Mm.
true. So we kind of went old school, which I thought was pretty cool. And we had teams broke up of a coalition between corn growers and ethanol industry, and we made it happen in town. And I didn't see the final count last night, but I know we were down to just less than a handful of offices, if you will, out of the 424. I think is the total number that didn't get touched by a group associated with ethanol and corn. And I think that's pretty loud grassroots advocacy, which is what National Corn Growers Association is grassroots advocacy. And I think we put that on full display in this type setup. So that was the last two trips. Um, we also this week had a fly-in teams on the Senate side working on input costs and fertilizer. We had a corn grower from South Dakota testify in that
Oh, I know who that is. It's
Trent Cubic.
Trent Cubic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh no,
he
Neil knows
tested.
who that is.
He testified in the Senate Ag Committee.
Yeah,
Kentucky's Farm Bureau President testified, Mr. Eddie
saw
Melton.
that. Yep.
Um, so it was a two-pronged approach. We kind of divided and conquered a little bit this week, um, in both sides of the hill.
Mm.
Input prices are at the forefront for the farmer, at the forefront of the priority list right now. Right beside and with E15. So we've kind of had to walk and chew gum at the same time. I sit on a task force.
I was gonna say, have you had any part in that?
I have, yeah, sit in a task force inside the national organization. I'm on the national board on top of the Kentucky board. So yeah,
Mm.
we got a lot of irons in the fire, and when we show up in town, it's usually a calculated effort for a reason, and sometimes that involves specific offices and specific meetings. Not
Mhm.
always member, a lot of times stakeholder. For ethanol, it's a lot of stakeholder meetings too. So it's
Mm.
just a broad coalition. It depends on what button we're pressing that day, but it's all rooted in trying to benefit our industry and benefit our families. And ultimately, for me, what drives me to do it when I participate and need to go is because I'm worried about the generation that I'm raising and what they're going to inherit um, from me. So
Yeah. Maybe this is maybe a little bit into the weeds. I saw something on Twitter, so this might not be valid, but there was no one at the National Soybean Association said anything, but there was some internal discussion of, is this going to hurt soybean demand, and should soybean growers be, specifically soybean growers, the association, be against this E15? You don't have to comment on this if you don't feel comfortable to, but is it one of those things that, like, there is that tension between, like, hey, like when we're in DC advocating for corn growers, there's a tension between, like, hey, not all the time, it doesn't always align with what a soybean grower or a wheat grower might be advocating for, because at the end of the day, you are an individual commodity group advocating for your constituents, which would be corn growers. But I know Kentucky is a lot smaller in terms of, like, you guys have a small grains council as well, which is very parallel to what you guys are already doing, right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. And I mean, yeah, there's definitely priority issues for the different commodity organizations. And I think the way I'd respond to that is I'm pretty confident I raise all three. So all three of them matter to me.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
I may not always agree with the approach of some of the other ones about their issues, but hey, I mean, Neil's directly involved with wheat, and obviously Neil and I we discuss a lot of things from faith, family to farming. Right? We cover all three of the F's in a day. So, um, those things matter. They're real. Sectors of the country have different needs and desires in some of their commodities. But I'll give great credence to the Corn Growers Association. I feel like as an association, we represent the need of all the farmers and the opinions of what it needs for it to be successful. And I take great pride in that. So, um, when it specifically what you said about maybe not wanting to support E15, I don't have a lot of details to share on it other than the fact that, some of them you can make assumptions out of models based on what you put in them. So,
Yeah. I
um,
was also gonna say, I mean, anyone who's set up to grow corn probably is also set up to grow soybeans. Like, I don't,
there
it's not
may be
hard to
there
make a
may be
switch,
some exceptions in the deep south, right? In the deep south,
but like very little, like very
very
little.
little.
Yeah.
And counted if you're not growing wheat, high probability for the most part, I think you're going to
Yep.
be 50-50. So,
Uh-huh.
um, the
I do
soybean,
know one guy who is 100% corn and seed corn. That's all he does. That's it.
yeah, I
But
can
that's
know
the only person I've ever met who's like, "Yep, I'm 100% committed to this crop."
that's
And he
great.
rents all his ground and just bounces from ground to ground to ground. So
Yeah.
he doesn't need to worry about rotations.
But I think it's a pretty hard argument how anybody in our industry could be against bolstering domestic consumption of our products and benefiting the general consumer, while also trying to dig up our hill of where are at right now financially in our industry. I think it's a pretty easy. The argument sells itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think anytime you're reducing commodity supply, it should automatically boost the other commodities just because there's less feedstocks available to end users. So if we can reduce the supply of one commodity, automatically you're going to force the price to raise on a alternative commodity.
Mhm.
So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see how it's a bad thing. I think the only people that could say a whole lot about it is the cattle producer because they're like, hey, we need that corn to to feed our cattle. But
But the great thing, the benefit of ethanol in that instance is they're going to get DDGs off of it.
sure,
It's the
yeah,
best part of the corn kernel is going right into the feedstock.
yeah,
Feed the part of the feedstock going into their feed rations.
yeah,
Yeah, and we can complain. I mean, guys, we have enough corn. Like, I think we all just want to get better prices for it. It's not a supply issue, it's a price issue. The reason we have a price issue is because we have too high of a supply currently. And so
yeah,
if there are ways we can consume it, a rising tide lifts all boats theoretically. So,
Yeah.
and the cattle guys confront it at least for a next little bit. I think they're going to be okay for a little bit. Um, Oh, I love this show. We get across so many different like borders that we literally had a cattle guy on right before this. And we need to get someone with a feedlot on here soon. That'd be a great one. But no, I think I'm not a fan of the government creating artificial demand. I am a fan of the government making it easier for uh private business to create their own demand and allow consumers choice. So I think this is a win. I also think it's a win anytime the government gets something done. So let's celebrate them doing their job.
That's right. On a lot of issues, I would agree with you about them being where they don't need to be. But on this particular issue, I think I'd have just a click of a pushback. Without the RFS, I don't know that our industry would ever got a shot in the gasoline market. I don't think we were big enough to go push our weight to get it.
Yeah, that oil lobby is pretty powerful.
Pretty powerful. Telling you from the inside, it's really powerful.
They have very nice
So
offices
as
in
the
DC.
I think it a lot of ways, Clayton, you and I agree on some of that stuff. But in this particular instance, I don't think we would have ever be sitting here today, or I fairly confident wouldn't be sitting here today. And as a producer and a farmer, and how much I care about how the farm is taken care of, and how we ultimately, you could get yourself in trouble saying this today in the political landscape, but we're environmentalists, right? I care about those things. So we developed an industry to use our product, and we've also cleaned up a whole lot of bad things coming out the tailpipes that were going to negatively affect our what my kids are going to live in. So I think in this particular instance, and we don't, I think, I don't know we would have got that opportunity to participate in a market and to also be beneficial because of our market.
I think I could agree with some of that. I could probably also push back on that. As someone who lives in a state that only grows things that get fed to cattle or turned into fuel, some days I'm like, my goodness, I wish there wasn't so much corn. That's my only pushback is sometimes,
I'm
and it's
not going to
because
argue that either. I understand.
I
I'm
live in a state where we have gotten to a point where we have no other options. You grow corn or you grow soybeans because you cannot make the land payments without it.
right.
Uh, that's my only pushback to all of that, and it will shift at some point. Like renewables are going to continue to grow, I think, but I'll also say like I'm looking at an electric car at some point. Like those are things that'll come down the road in a world where we do need better prices and we do have too much supply on hand for a lot of things. I think I'm for having some ethanol mixed in. I also am against big oil because they have done some horrible things. With that said, Big Ag has also done some horrible things. I'm just going to take the middle ground in all of this. I am from California. I don't have to take a stance. I can say whatever I want and be a hypocrite. Totally fine. That's my heritage, right?
I'll say
that's how this works.
I'll say this.
We pulled some California votes yesterday.
Yeah,
Well,
and you love their votes, but you don't want to hang out with them.
Hey man, I think as bad as some days are, I think it still makes our country the best one on the face of the planet because they can have their opinions and we operate together. We just have to
And
Yeah.
I 100%
maintain
agree with that.
consistency that we can still sit down at the table and make a decision.
1000%. I do agree with that. Amen to democracy and America.
It was pretty surreal last night. So I sat in the gallery and watched the vote unfold last night, and I kind of had that thought, Clayton. Yeah, I was sitting amongst four walls that hold half the handle to the centrics of our democracy, and as bad as that town frustrates me a lot of days, um, I tell you, I still walk through there, and you walk through the rotunda, and the people that set the precedent of this country operated in that town in those exact buildings on those square inches where I'm standing. And that never gets old, and it still makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck.
I was going to say the same thing every time I walk through there. Hair stands up on the back of my neck.
I mean, you just go by. I'm a history buff, a U.S. history buff mainly, not as much world history. And I'm walking on some of the same steps that the giants of the United States touched, and what shaped us to where we are today, and the country we have, and the opportunities we had to talk about if we're going to grow corn or strawberries or drive an EV or have E15. And I'm raising my kids in a country that the forefathers put forth, and I'm standing on the same places they made decisions, and that is not something I take lightly. And I'm just on
Mhm.
a commodity board.
Yeah. And you because of that get to make the choice. We get to make the choice to do what we want. I do not legally have to grow what the government tells me to. Does the
Absolutely.
government make it easier for me to grow some things over other things? Yes. But do I have to do it? No, I do not,
That's
which
right.
is pretty darn awesome.
Pretty
So
dang.
I think that's all we got for you, Brandon. Thank you for coming on and talking about this at the last minute. We texted him this morning. Was like, Brandon, you were there. Let's get you on the show. We'll
I
probably
was
have you
getting
on at
on an
some point.
airplane in DC when Neil texted this morning. I said, "Yeah, I'll be home in just a little bit, and let's get still fresh in my mind."
Yeah, I
Give
think
us
we'll have you on again at some point because
Sure.
this will be the renewables conversation is not over. Corn
Yeah.
growers, ethanol, it will come back up again. We still have to see if it gets through Congress, and we still are waiting the farm bill to be finally approved. So like we're like slowly making progress there, but it's government and agriculture. They're always going to be holding hands. So
I'd be remiss too if I didn't brag just a little bit. Neil and I as the state delegation, man, we have such rock stars that represent us in the House of Representatives. We went 6-0 last night in voting for this, and we are so blessed to have so many well respected people in that town from our state, and it's always a blessing to walk through that place and uh, interact with the people that represent us. We've got a great group that are very effective in getting a lot of things done. And I was so proud last night. We went 6-0 voting in favor of the legislation. It was cherry on top for me. So
Yeah, Kentucky's got some
well done.
great representatives. Before you jump off here, I just wanted an update from your own farm about your current crops. Like what's your take on the quality and how they're doing in the field?
So you appreciate this. Anytime you step away for a day or two, you get a better look when you come back, right?
Yeah,
So I looked this morning coming in, of course. I think, in my opinion, my corn still looks like crap. I think it looks better than it did, but I still think it looks like crap. But it's in good shape. The color's coming around. I think I could see it's changed some since we left. So we've got a good start. Stands are nice. Moisture levels probably a little lower than I'd like to see it right now, but I definitely putting roots down. I would assume. I think the corn crop's in a decent place. We're all side dressed, and they finished spraying herbicide while I was gone. So I think we're about to put a bow on it for a little while. Wheat changed color a little bit. I'm a little reserved about what we're gonna do, how we're gonna shake out with wheat. We got in a pretty heavy drought on this side of the state, and I think it definitely negatively affected it. got I don't like to ever see my flag leaves have a bad day on wheat, and they definitely had a lot of bad days and
hmm
rolled some, and it's been under an immense amount of stress. So I think we're gonna have a good crop of wheat. I don't think we're gonna have a great crop. It's shorter than it needs to be, I think, and I think that
I
usually
agree.
makes me feel or kind of sets my tone how I feel about it.
hmm
And we probably lost some primary tillers there early on um, in the cold, so I don't know. I'm kind of a mixed bag on the wheat. I think it's going to be a decent crop. I'm hopeful, and it should be. I think the quality should be a really good quality crop, which is always a benefit for us in our wheat because it goes directly into the high value market for flour. So, pretty excited about that. With the lackluster quality we've had the last couple of years, so maybe
Yes.
we don't have to pull that stress lever, which would be a great blessing. Because for me, it seems like the how the wheat crop sets up kind of sets my tone for the year of how I think we're going to be. In the last couple of years, it hadn't been a real good tone. So I'm
Hmm.
looking forward to getting started with harvest here. Maybe end of the month, first
Yeah.
of June. It's always the best worst time of the year. So yeah, I think that's kind of the state of the affairs here. We got still a little bit of we had still carry a little bit of dark fire tobacco. Got it set this week while I was gone. They did, and trying to get everything dressed, rehearsed up, and flipped over and done up for the Mad Dash in June.
Sweet.
Well,
All right,
we appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy it.
Yep.
Brandon, you're the man. All right. Well, just a reminder, this show is brought to you by Agri Financial. If you have any ag financing needs, give them a call. You can find the info in the description of this live show and just look up CGB-AgFi and you'll be able to find them. So share this with your friends, leave a review anywhere you have it. If you listen on Spotify or Apple or wherever, just leave us a review. And yeah, I think think that's